All right, now that the dust has settled with update 2.5, we can finally talk about what kind of changes we've seen so far, gameplay-wise, and how the roles have kind of circulated as far as what kind of metas we're seeing, although I technically don't see it as a meta, even though people are kind of calling it that way just because of Ultron's team-up ability, which includes Iron Man, and suddenly people are saying it's a flyer meta. I don't really see it that way. At the moment, it is a little bit harder right now to deal with Ultron because it's so much easier. If you're a dive player, it's so much easier for you to play a melee-based character that's good at diving like Black Panther or Spider-Man, even Iron Fist, Captain America, just anyone who's good at diving the backline. They now only have one sole focus, which is just the one extra support now that Ultron is a flyer. This means that the team has to really change up their composition a bit. So if you're a dive character and possibly diving the backline just isn't working out as well for you, you could possibly also switch over to a more projectile hit scan based character, although the only two heroes I consider to be hit scan would be Punisher and Black Widow. Black Widow is actually in a much better spot now that she has her team up ability with the Punisher, turning her rifle into a plasma rifle that now has semi-auto fire, so now there is no longer a delay between shots. She can actually fire pretty quickly now. I find it pretty cool, and of course that team ability also allows that rifle, I think they call it a pulse rifle now, to actually pierce targets. Another cool little feature about her. I actually kind of like Black Widow in this kind of state. I wish I had some B-roll footage of her because I'm kind of improving my Black Widow a bit now that the meta has. I don't know. I'm just gonna. Yeah, I think I said earlier that there is no meta, but yeah, I'm just gonna call it that because it is having me. It's forcing me to actually switch over to, because a lot of times I'm actually not getting a chance to heal now, which is actually a good thing. I can actually focus more on my DPS game since it is a little bit weak, and I've been focusing a lot more on playing Bucky. Bucky's really good at anti-air, especially now that his orb has 2 charges, his E ability, and also focusing on Black Widow as well. I've always been kind of decent with sniper-based characters, and now with Black Widow having that team-up ability with Punisher, and the fact that she also had another recent buff from the previous update that changed how her grapple and her grapple and her hook combo work, which means now that after you follow up with the hook for that stun, you can actually follow up with a quick shot, something she couldn't do before. There was too much of a delay, which meant the character that you would stun would move out of the way before you could actually get that follow-up shot. A lot of times I would miss that follow-up shot. Now it's so much easier to actually use Black Widow. The gist of it is, if you're not good with projectile-based characters and hit scan based characters, now is a good opportunity to actually try and learn it, since we are dealing with Ultron a lot. We are also dealing with Iron Man quite often now, and of course we're dealing with the occasional Storm and Star-Lord. Although Star-Lord is still Star-Lord. No changes were made to him, pretty much the same. Although if you see Jeff in the game, kind of just be ready for the fact that you also be coming across a Storm. Storm is still pretty easy to deal with. She's a very slow character. Probably one of the easiest flying characters to deal with, right behind Iron Man, just because she has no form of hyper movement like I was about to say Ultron, but like no hyper movement like Iron Man. Ultron does have his kind of Human Torch-esque movement ability. With all that out of the way, Ultron actually is a pretty strong support. I know I said earlier in my previous video that no one watched, Ultron is actually, when I first said that Ultron is not good at supporting the front line, that I think that is still true. Ultron's healing is pretty weak, but it's also very strong because it's an AoE based healing. Again, his drone does not go away. It's not on a cooldown. It's not on a timer. If it gets destroyed, you can immediately move it over to another character, or if the character dies, the drone does come back to him, so he does have options on how he wants to place his drone. Drone is really good to be used on DPS characters or flyers or other strategists, just basically anyone that has a low HP, or not low HP, but doesn't have tank-like HP. It's good to use on them because they actually heal pretty quickly. With a tank, that's way too much healing, and Ultron's healing, again, is pretty weak. It cannot sustain a front line, so that's why he needs the help of another support. And not lately, it's actually almost every game now, it's always going to be triple support. A lot of the times you're going to see a Jeff in there with Ultron. Now, speaking of Jeff, before I move on, I am no Jeff aficionado. I'm not a pro Jeff player. I've seldomly played Jeff from time to time. Even before the update, was always kind of Jeff is just kind of there. I was never really good at landing the ult. a lot, mostly because whenever I wanted to use Jeff, there was always a team that could really easily counter Jeff's ult, which kind of just always made it not too fun to play him. But with this update, the only thing I'll agree with Jeff's new kit is his healing beam. It now acts not only as healing, but it can also damage enemies too. And obviously it penetrates everything and anything it hits. So that's the only cool thing about it. The damage though is, it's not too bad. It does do a fair good amount of damage. I do get a lot of multi-kills with it, especially when I kind of just sit in the corner and just kind of shoot it right where my teammates are, just because the enemies are there too. It does mean that he does build up ult a little bit faster than he used to. Jeff's shift ability has also changed too. Now you can no longer stay submerged for as long as you want. You can only stay submerged for a few seconds at a time now. When you're fighting against Jeff, it was always the most annoying part of dealing with a Jeff player, was just the fact that he could stay submerged for as long as he wanted and just kind of trolling you, basically, having such a small hitbox. Now you only got to wait a couple seconds, and a lot of times you can always get the jump on Jeff regardless if he tries to get away from you. So regardless if you're a chase character or if you're a hit scan character or projectile based character, just anyone who's trying to deal with Jeff, it's so much easier that way. But if you're someone who loves playing Jeff, yeah, it does kind of suck that now you can no longer stay submerged for as long as you want and use the opportunity to regain full health, especially if you're on low health. I've been having fun with Groot as Jeff still has the team up ability with him. Even though Jeff's right click has been turned into a charge based ability, he still gives Groot more firepower, with his primary being able to provide consistent damage over time and healing at the same time. So if you're against the team up, it does make it a little more difficult to approach Groot from a distance if you're a melee based hero. Jeff's ult is still the same, but overall Jeff's kit changes does make him feel more like he went from Jeff the CEO to minimum wage Jeff. If you're keen on wanting to do the new triple support, but you're also having trouble dealing with the enemy team who also has triple support, it might be best to have one of your supports be Luna. Luna does have those buffs that she had from the previous update, the strategist update basically, as we call it, where her damage fall off kind of actually increased. So now she can actually hit a little bit further without having as much damage fall off. This does make her more of a sniper based character. She can easily deal with Ultron and Iron Man, and one thing I've noticed too is Iron Man is now trying to play safer. And most of these games, Iron Man is trying to stay as far back as he can, as high up as he can, but being up as high as he can does make it easier for him to be a target. So if you're really good with your aim, taking Iron Man out should be no problem for you. Even though Ultron has some good movement, he is still pretty slow. So just keep that in mind. Never count Luna out. She is really good for counter, even though she's more of like a soft counter to Flyer, since the only way she can deal with Flyers is her basic attack, but still she is a counter to Flyers regardless. Overall, it's a good update for support, though some don't see it that way, with Ultron turning it into a triple support and Dive having taken a hit. But as a support player, this has made it easier to heal and support the team, though you'll still deal with backline problems. However, Ultron having a strong DPS game has made it easier for him to support the backline, while the backline not only supports him, but the rest of the team as well. I haven't been seeing Rocket being used as much, considering he has a ridiculous team up with Penny, though it's usually attributed to not seeing Penny often either. Constantly seeing Ultron and Iron Man should give anyone who isn't good with Bucky, Widow, Punisher, and Hela. I mentioned earlier that the only hit scan heroes are Punisher and Widow, but I always forget Hela is a thing. Hawkeye is also a good choice for dealing with flying characters, especially when you have his ult. His ult just means it's an instant wipe for flying characters if they're not trying to hide. I mean, the DPS game has options. They have choices on how to deal with flying characters. It's just no one wants to. I just don't think anyone wants to take the time to learn precision based characters. I mean, I've had games where I'm playing with a Moon Knight and we have to deal with Storm, Ultron, Iron Man, and Star-Lord. There's been few matches like that where I'm dealing with those specific characters, and we have a lot of times I'll see someone playing Moon Knight. Like, what's Moon Knight supposed to do in that situation? Yes, Moon Knight can take out flyer characters, especially in the more condensed areas where there's a lot of walls, a lot of buildings. Makes it easier to take out flyer characters because the Yonk can actually reach them. It's just the fact that Moon Knight doesn't have the consistency needed to constantly deal with all that air power. Unless you're a really good Moon Knight and know how to follow your targets, and you know what, go off, Chief. It's just, for me personally, I have not seen a whole lot of good Moon Knights, especially Moon Knights who can actually work without using the Ankh all the time and having to constantly rely on the Ankh. Lastly, for future strategists coming out, I wouldn't mind a healer who's more ground-based, but has an ability that will allow them to fly for a period of time, kind of like how Star-Lord and Strange's flight mechanics work. I do want to see more healers that don't promote triple support. That's kind of the one thing I can agree on. And the reason I don't like triple support is, one, it takes too long to build your ult, and two, if both teams are running triple support, those games can drag on forever and you can be in overtime forever. I just don't like such long games, especially in games where they're not designed to be running that long. So Ultron doesn't seem to have that issue though, as I've seen games not only 2 minutes into starting, he's already using his ult. So in any case, having more healers that don't require triple support is a plus in my book. I want strategists to be in a good spot, but not an overpowered spot. Since it has been a week now since Ultron did come out, I still firmly believe Ultron doesn't really need any tweaks to his kit. I believe I said in the previous video, the day that he did come out, that his healing was a bit weak, could do with some improvement. But over time, I have come to realize that his healing is still pretty strong, although I think that's attributed to the fact that players are quickly realizing on their own that Ultron's healing just isn't sustainable for tanks. They take too much damage as opposed to the amount of health that they regain. But it is good at maintaining the health for DPS players as well as other support players, so it's really good in that aspect. I know that there are some players who said that it's just really hard to try and kill Ultron. I don't think it's hard to kill Ultron, it's just the fact that there aren't very many good players out there good with projectile based characters or just characters that require that precision aim to take out flying characters, so they're always trying to leave it to someone else who can deal with it when they themselves are DPS. I've actually been in a few games where the DPS are actually arguing amongst each other over who should be swapping off to actually make it easier to deal with flying characters, and a lot of times neither of them will do it, and the argument just kind of goes nowhere and we end up losing that game. So that seems to be a thing now, and I don't know why. No one wants to take time out of their day to learn a new hero, I guess. Alright, that about does it for this video. I just wanted to focus on the support aspect of the update rather than the entire update, so I don't have anything to add to Thor. I don't really play Thor, so I can't really say anything about that. I just wanted to stay focused on the support stuff. Alright, thanks for watching. See you guys on the next video. Bye.